Hey everyone, Jordan here. You may remember a little while ago we looked at the ASUS ProArt PA401. Today we're going to be looking at the smaller brother, the PA401. This is a lot smaller than the previous version, but retains a lot of the features that we really liked from the 602. There are a few limitations you're going to need to know about, so let's get it open out the box and take a look. Little accessory box in the top of the box. Inside there we're going to find some zip ties with all of our different types of screws, and then we've also got an additional plate that allows you to rotate the angle of the vertical mount so you can go from portrait to horizontal. We've also got a user guide and also some warranty information, and that's all in the little box. There we go, that is the PA401, a lot more reasonably sized than the 602. That's just a behemoth. This is gone the total opposite really, especially when it comes to graphics cards and things you can fit in. On the front we have got that wood finish front. This is the wood edition, but it is very subtle. I actually had to look side on to actually confirm that it was the wood one, because it did look like, you know, the standard one to begin with. If you're not a fan of the wood grain, ASUS do offer this case with a more plastic style front that we saw on the PA602, and both versions are also available with either a mesh panel or a metal side panel along with a tempered glass. So you've got 6 different SKUs there to pick from, so lots of different options. I'll just take this off and then hold it up to the camera. You should hopefully see the grain on the edges there. Now this is also sustainably sourced wood and certified by the FSC. We've also got the ProArt logo on the bottom there. On the back we have got a dust filter. Doesn't seem to be one that you can remove though, so you will obviously just have to blow it through instead. And then taking that out of the way, we've got two 160mm fans in this. We had 200mm ones in the 602, but we have obviously got smaller ones for the smaller case. These are 160 though, so still fairly large, and they also are 32mm thick, so we're going to push a lot more air than just standard thickness case fans. Now you've also got some mounts there for 140mm fans, so should you maybe want to use an AO in the front instead, you can do that if you wish. So let's pop that back on, there we go, and then have a look on the top of the case. Now much like the 602, we've got a little lever that you just pinch at the back, and then that slides backwards and comes off. Got a very fine mesh here, no dust filter, but the majority of people will be bringing air out and exhausting it out the top anyway. It's that mix that catches dust yet still has good airflow. Then on the top we can see our fan and radiator support. You could do two 140mm fans or one 240mm radiator. Unfortunately 240 is going to be the limit with this case, so yeah, a little bit limiting I would say for most people, but I expect we'll see maybe a 502 or a 501 ProArt at some point that meets in the middle with a 360. So going on to the top of the case, we've got the front panel, which is very similar to the 602, which I really did like. We've first got a fan control on the left. This includes a 5-port 4-pin hub on the back, and then that controls either by PWM with the auto switch, or you can turn that on to maximum for obviously maximum RPM. We've also then got 2 USB-A ports, either USB 3, headphone microphone combi jack. Didn't see an adapter in the box, which is a little bit of a shame, to just split that out for those headsets that do use both jacks. So that's something that I think ASUS could add. We've also got a Type-C, that's USB 3.2 Gen 2x2, so 20 gigabits per second, really nice throughput there. We've also got a reset button, and I think my favourite thing from the 602 was the little switch you can flick across to then stop the power button from being engaged. So if you've got any cats or pets that like to go across the top of your case, that could be a very handy button for you. Going to the back of the case, we first got a little lock for the side panel, a nice little addition there. Then we've got a pre-installed 120mm fan. We'll talk more about that when we get inside the case. We've got some cable management channels down the side, so you can run all of your cables and things from your rear I/O down nicely. We've got 7 expansion brackets moving further down, standard amount. We can also do the vertical mount like I showed you that's in the accessory box. And then finally at the bottom we've got our power supply mount. This has a little bracket you can remove to put it on first, then slide in your power supply afterwards. Then last but not least, at the bottom we have got a removable dust filter. On the bottom of the case, not much to talk about. We've got the dust filter that we saw, then also some feet with some rubber on the top. Quite a nice depth there though, about 20mm, so you get some nice airflow for the power supply at the bottom. So unlocking the glass side panel, we can then lift this up and then out, so it will be easier to do obviously when it's stood up, but I'm doing this flat on the desk. Nice tempered piece of glass, around about 3mm there. So looking inside the case, we've got support for an ATX motherboard. We've then got some cutouts at the top and the sides for cables to come around. If I just tilt this up, we've then got some additional cut through, so your graphics card cable can come up through there, then your front panel and any USB headers at the bottom. At the back we've got the pre-installed 120mm fan. This is also 28mm thick, so should give a little bit extra cooling performance. Now if you're wondering about the case dimensions as a whole, this is 412mm deep. The width is 225 and also 503mm tall. Now that does give us limitations in terms of graphics card and CPU towers. So for our CPU tower, we could do a maximum of 160mm, and then the graphics card length is going to be 315. So if that was another 20mm longer, you could fit some really beefy cards in, like the Strixes and the Tufts and things like that, but that will be one of the limiting factors with this case. So this is the 9070 XT Prime, and as you can see, that's literally just going in there, so a little bit limiting I feel there, but hopefully, like I said, we'll see a middle ground that can support a 360 and some wider cards. Then lastly, going on to the back panel, taking that side panel off, again, a very similar mechanism to the front. We've then got all of our cable options. We've got the hub that I mentioned at the top, so we've got 3 fans obviously pre-installed, so there's 2 spots on there for an additional one. That then runs with the SATA power, and then we'll find all of our connections on the end of this bit that I just need to cut. So on the end of there, we've got the 4-pin for PWM control on the motherboard, USB 3 header, Type-C header, then we've also got a HD audio, and then a front panel connector all in one block, which we love to see. We've also got some more cable management points across there, so you can zip tie things, especially for your EPS cables that are going to go up to the top. That hole looks a little bit small, but I'm sure you'll be able to get 2 8-pin EPS connectors through there. A little bit snug though. Also got the big Velcro cable ties there, of course, as well. Also got this little sled for some SSDs or a hard drive if you'd rather. You can do 2 2.5-inch drives or 1 3.5-inch on there. We've also then got some additional sleds down the bottom, the more traditional ones, so you can do either 1 hard drive or 1 2.5-inch SSD. So that's a total of 4 2.5-inch drives or 3 3.5-inch with this case. Now with that sled in, you've got up to 170mm of space, but I think most people will be taking out, then you've got the full length there to play with. But that was a little look around the case. Now I'm going to get my test system in, we can do the thermal testing. I could tell you about the build process and then give you my overall thoughts. So on to the conclusion then for the PA401. It was a very simple build experience, much like the 602. Very easy to get to where you want to for certain things. I could even connect the EPS cables afterwards, even with the air tower in there. So very simple to build in. In terms of the fitment and things, that's a 3080 that I've got in there, and that's looking quite cramped. So that is obviously a problem there with the limitations for the graphics card, but we'll talk more on that in a minute. Now, in terms of performance, I did my usual benchmarking with this. We run all the fans at 1500 RPM. We've got a 5800 X3D in there, and we did our usual Cinebench runs, and this came out really well. Sorting out the graph by delta, we saw this in the first handful of cases, so a very, very cool case. These fans that they include push so much air. Now, I did have to run those at full chat, so they're around 1425 RPM in the front to get them as close as 1500 RPM as I can. There was a little bit of a limiting thing there. I couldn't do dead on 1500, but they move so much air that they're performing really well anyway, but that's obviously from the sheer size and that additional thickness. I'll just flick the switch as well so you can hear this at full RPM. So even with the 120mm fan in the back, this is certainly quieter than my daily system that runs 120mm fans in the front, standard 25mm thick. And then given that we've got the bigger fans in the front, they can move at a slower RPM to move the same amount of air. So I think relatively quiet considering even at full RPM. Not many people will be running it like that, I don't think anyway, unless you're doing heavy editing or rendering. But even under the same circumstances, my daily system is a lot louder than this. So I would say that's a pretty good job there in terms of the cooling performance and the noise. Now, other things, like I said, graphics card limitations, that's going to be a big thing with this case, and the 315mm is a little bit limiting. Would like to see a little bit of a bigger version of this that can support a 360mm aero in the roof as well. In terms of the controls on the top though, one thing that we saw from the 602, I do love that. I also love that we've got the little illumination on the power button as well. I'll put some B-roll so you can see that on the screen now. But that is one of my favourite things from this case. Also, the quick release side panels is a nice little addition as well. There's no anti-sag bracket included in this case, which we did see in the 602. If you're wondering about the cooler that I'm using here, this is the Noctua U12A and just about fits with the glass side panel. So again, limiting there with the 160mm height for your cooler. Another thing as well, given that the ProArt branding generally has a bit of a price premium to it, I think most people will be buying higher end parts to go in these kind of cases anyway. So then that does again give you a limiting factor on what you can support with it. If you are looking to build a system for creative work and you need a lot of graphics card grunt, you may be looking to use a 5090 for processing power, and that is going to be a limiting factor for what you can fit in. As far as I know, they only have the ProArt cards up to the 5080 anyway, I think overall though, the outside of the case is very finished and polished, especially bringing over the features that we saw on the 602. The inside does feel a little bit cheaper, especially without grommets and things like that. However, this is coming in at £119 for either edition, so the plastic front, the mesh side, the clear side, tempered glass, or the wood front, whichever SKU you go for, it's the same price across the board. So certainly I think more affordable, but I think an interim would be quite nice, maybe a case that's aimed at say 159, something like that, that has a bit more support for the 360, deeper graphics cards, and you don't want something that's massive like the 602. I'll also be doing a build with this case, so if there's anything else that I missed that you'd like to know about, then do leave a comment down below and I'll make sure to cover it in that video. I think maybe we'll try the vertical mount for the graphics card out as well. But that's going to be it for this one. I did want to do a little bit of a quicker conclusion so we don't waffle for too long. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, leave a comment if there's anything else you want to know. I'll leave the links to this in the description box below if you want to pick one up. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.